you can get over addiction. Number 2, you can stop smoking. I do strongly recommend, while we're in this pandemic and while we are in this season where the fear and the anxiety is heightened, you have to understand that what a person is feeling emanates out 3 feet and can impact other people. By changing the way that you think, you change your life and you change the people around you so that you make better decisions.
Well, today we are here with Smoke Break. Smoke Break is a video podcast that is here to help you kick your tobacco habit, powered by Internet for Health. I'm Kailah Ware, host of Smoke Break, and I am here with Dr. Denise Brown. Dr. Brown, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure. First, thank you for letting me be here.
Oh, no
Great
problem.
being here.
Of course.
Yes, I'm Dr. Denise, and my background is as a registered nurse in critical care. From there, I got my PhD in leadership, where I had a focus on emotional resilience and psychological health. And so as a registered nurse, what I identified is I could understand, recognize, and name every heart rhythm that was associated with biology and with the physical body. But there is a heart rhythm that we never talked about that is associated with emotional health, that you can look at and tell if you are emotionally happy, fearful, or anxious. And there's interventions that we can do with that. And because we weren't talking about that in the nursing community, I learned about it. So I'm a certified emotional resilience practitioner with the Institute of HeartMath.
Thank you so much for that intro. This
Absolutely.
is awesome. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you for being here.
My
So,
pleasure.
as you know, Smoke Break is about tobacco and tobacco usage and helping people kick their tobacco habits, specifically in the Black community.
Mhm.
And one thing that we do know is that Black folks and white folks, we smoke about around the same rate,
Mhm.
but tobacco physically affects Black people in a much harsher way than it does non-people of color.
Absolutely.
So today we understand that tobacco is a holistic, tobacco use isn't just because I like smoking. It's stress, it's anxiety, it's depression, it's generational. So just from, your expertise, can you tell us a little bit about stress and anxiety and where tobacco and other habits or addictions come into play?
Absolutely. And great question. Just for context, I wanted to talk about the difference between stress and anxiety,
Yeah. Okay.
because they are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so to introduce that, let's say my family, we went hiking recently,
Oh,
in
nice.
Hiking Hills. So let's say if while we
That's
were
stressful.
hiking, we were approached by, let's say, a bear or a mountain lion,
Mhm.
that would be a physical threat that would cause my body to go into the fight or flight response.
Right.
And I would react appropriately, either get away from it, and when you're away from the stress,
Right.
then that stress response should stop.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And that's stress.
Okay.
So anxiety is about perception.
Okay.
Okay? So anxiety, you can have the perception that a stressor is there, but there's no mountain lion there.
Okay.
Okay?
So
There's
it's
no
not
bear
actually
there.
there.
It's not actually there,
Mhm.
but our bodies respond in the exact same way for the perceived stress versus the actual stress. And so what we know with science is that in addition to your body responding as if there is a threat, your heart rhythms change patterns based on what you are feeling.
Mm.
It's not based on what you're thinking.
Okay.
So for me, when I was first introduced to this, the Bible talks about a merry heart doing good like a medicine,
Mhm.
but a broken spirit drieth the bones.
Mhm.
Guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it comes the issues of life.
Mhm.
As a man thinketh, so is he.
Yep.
So my first introduction to the heart and the power of the heart was biblical.
Mhm.
And so now we know that what we think, we become.
Mm.
Okay?
Yep.
And so in the African American community, we have all of these different layers of whether it was segregation or whether it's police brutality, whether it is racism. We have all these layers that we keep piling upon us that have all these, some of them are realities, but for some of them, they're perceptions. So if we think about Trayvon Martin, if we think about George Floyd, we have all these images in our mind that continue to cause that fight or flight response. And when that response is constantly stimulated in our body, it ends up causing us to release more cortisol. So as we are thinking and feeling these negative emotions, our bodies are responding physiologically in ways that are detrimental to our health. So you have rushes of adrenaline that occur. You have cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And what that hormone does in small doses is really good because it helps you to react.
It lets you run from the mountain lion or attack the mountain lion.
That's exactly right.
I got you.
But in prolonged chronic cases, what happens is our bodies shoot more adrenaline, so our heart beats faster. Okay, our body shunts blood away from the organs that don't matter, because the only thing that matters is that your heart is pumping more oxygen and that your brain is allowing you to think. Okay. So cortisol, what it does is it pumps out a lot of glucose, and so what ends up happening is you end up putting on weight. It's devastating for diabetics because you have all this circulating sugar in your body because your body keeps thinking there's a stressor. So it keeps doing what it's supposed to do. And so the challenge for us in the African American community is that in addition to all the layers that I already mentioned, now we're in the middle of a pandemic. Which is systemic fear that everybody is, who has it, right? Am I going to get it? Am I going to die? The images that you see, they're starting to bring out again the 18-wheeler freezers, and so those images, we have to learn how to shut that off. Right? And we have to re-hardwire ourselves neurologically. And we do that by engaging positive emotions in the area of the heart. And then what the science shows us, and we know this over 30 years through the Institute of Heart Math. So then what happens when you engage these positive feelings, then that starts to rewire and reprogram neurological spaces in the amygdala and the limbic system in your brain that has made you think about certain things in a certain way all your life. So the challenge that we have in the African American community is to not see ourselves as oppressed, is to not buy into the hatred that we know is out there. So whether it's through positive affirmations, we have to take control of the thoughts and the images in our minds that have been compounded there for years.
How do you overcome? You know what I mean? Like, how do you take those steps to at least try to protect your health? And like, it's just, you have any thoughts around that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So the first thing that I always suggest is that we have to be intentional. It takes 21 days at least to create a habit. So for me, my daily regimen is first thing in the morning is prayer and then positive affirmations. What positive affirmations do, and there's a lot of great YouTube videos that have the tones at a certain megahertz that's actually stimulating different parts of your brain.
Like frequency.
Yes,
so
different frequencies.
Like
absolutely. And so while that's happening, the messages are being spoken to. I am loved. I am strong. I am appreciated. So those messages, what we're doing is rewiring ourselves neurologically, which is what we have to do in order to reduce or change the messages that have been ingrained in us. For instance, when I was in high school, the whole time I was in high school, my guidance counselor told me, even though I wanted to be a nurse, you're not nurse potential. You need to be a secretary. You need to, absolutely. And I got to the point where I delayed my nursing career because he constantly put those messages in my brain, right? So my parents, fortunately, put a different message in. And so for me, and even in the African American community, our faith and prayer, those things are very strong, but they're very powerful. So the Institute of Heart Math, they have been doing research for well over 30 years. And the research is about the power of the heart in balancing emotions because our bodies are electrical organs. And so since the heart produces the most electrical current, when you are able to create feelings, and it's not a thought, it's a feeling of love, care, or appreciation, your heart rhythms change from a very erratic rhythm to a very smooth, coherent rhythm. And then when you're able to engage your heart to create that rhythm, then your brain rhythms also
follow that
synchronize, right? They
you.
synchronize. And so one other point that I want to make as it pertains to health, we also know that our immune system is significantly impacted by what we're feeling.
Okay? Oh, wow. Okay.
And so through the research of the Institute of Heart Math, what they did is they had participants think about something that made them feel very negative, fear, and anger. Okay. And they had already checked their saliva and checked for their IgA or their immunoglobulin. So they had a baseline.
Okay, so this is those things are the baselines of like your stress or your emotional.
Yeah, so one of your immunoglobulins it measures how much stress you have. Okay. And so they measured it before they had them first think on something very negative and feel anger, frustration, or fear. Okay. And they had them feel that for just 5 minutes. Okay. After the 5 minutes, they took another swab of saliva and they checked that. And what they found is that the immune system, just 5 minutes of thinking of a negative emotion, decreased by 60%, and it stayed down for 6 hours. Wow. So when I go out and I teach in the community, I always stop right there, because if only 5 minutes of feeling anger
can suppress your
immune system 50%, it stays down 6 hours. Think about how often social media, what's happening in politics, the pandemic. So constantly all day we are feeling those thoughts. And so our body's immune system is setting us up for what? Flu, pneumonia, coronavirus, cancer, so on and so forth. Respiratory disease, right. And so that's why it's imperative to try to change the narrative, is one, to make people more self-aware of what's happening when they are feeling upset and negative, because the end result of that is exhaustion, fatigue, depression.
So when you deal with folks who have addictions, right, and you care for them and you talk to them and you guide them, what are some things that you tell them as far as trying to help? Like, how can we help people, or how can we help folks who are saying, like, I don't want to smoke anymore, I don't want to drink anymore, I don't want to have these type of addictive behaviors that are affecting my physical? Yes. Like, what is the advice that we can give to people who are struggling with that?
Yes, and that's a very good question. So the very first thing is they have to become self-aware. You have to be self-aware that the routines that we do are hardwired in our neurology. Okay? And so the very first thing that has to happen is you have to give them interventions or techniques if they really want, and like you said, for somebody who really wants to stop with whatever the addiction is, but then we have to give them tools to change that neurological dynamic. Okay. And so when you are working to change, whether it's addiction or habits, breathing is very powerful. Okay. So what you do is you take real deep breaths in for 5 seconds, and then you blow it out for 5 seconds. And with each breath that you take in, you really expand your lungs, and then you blow it out. And then you expand your lungs. Well, then quick coherence causes you to engage a positive feeling while you're doing that breathing.
So while you're breathing, you're thinking about something that's positive. You're thinking about something that brings you joy, love, happiness.
Yes, but you're feeling that.
You're feeling it. Okay.
Yes. So you can think about where you were, but then you have to feel how you felt.
Okay.
So for instance, I worked with a child at a charter school. He was 9 years old. He was in the principal's office all the time, truant behavior, grades were all over the place. And they wanted me to work with him so that we could change behavior. Okay? And so when I was talking to this child, I was trying to get him to identify with something that made him feel love, care, or appreciation. So I come from a wonderful family. My mother gave the best hugs in the world. And that's my feeling state, is just remembering how Mama used to hug us, right? So I said, well, think about your mom hugging you. How'd that feel? Well, Mom works 2 jobs, so she's never home.
So she's not hugging
you. So then the next thing that I thought about was my dad, because my dad, we would eat popcorn every Sunday. We had to watch Dallas Cowboys, right? Football. But, it was just a family event. It was our socialization, and I loved that. So I said, what about your dad? You and your dad playing football. Dad was incarcerated. So Denise, I'm like, wow, got to come up with something. So what I said to that student is, tell me what makes your heart smile. What makes your heart smile? And he stopped and he paused, And he said, eating a Riley's hamburger. Right?
That's real.
So
No,
it's
most
real,
people
right?
enjoy.
It doesn't matter what it is.
It doesn't.
And as he was feeling and remembering being in that situation, the waveform that was squiggly all over the place immediately went to this beautiful, coherent heart rhythm. Okay? And so what's happening when you generate that, your heart rhythms are changing, your EEG waves are changing, you're synchronized. So the area that's in your brain called the amygdala, it houses emotional memory, generally negative. You rewire that area because the impulses go through the amygdala up to your isocortex or your frontal lobe.
Okay.
So now that addiction, you can start looking at it in a different way.
Okay.
Those behaviors, you can start looking at those behaviors in a different way because you're accessing higher levels of functioning. And so what fear and anxiety do is keep you from getting there.
When I think about Smoke Break and the campaign that we are on, Quit Culture, and our main objective is to come to help people from a place of compassion and community.
Yes.
And everything that you just talked about today, it just not only from an emotional standpoint, but from a scientific standpoint, really ties in why community, emotional support, compassion is so important to our physical health. So thank you so much, Dr. Denise. If you could just leave us on a inspirational word or something that you would tell somebody who is trying to quit smoking.
First and foremost, again, I go back to a biblical passage that says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So it is very, very important for you to understand what are the thoughts that are impacting your everyday life. What are you thinking? Begin to pay attention to how many thoughts are negative, how many thoughts are positive. Also take into consideration of the people who are around you. Are the people around you, are they negative? Are they positive? Are they happy? Are they sad? Because we also know through science that what a person is feeling emanates out 3 feet and can impact other people. Okay, so not only do you have to make decisions about you being in a positive, happy place, you also have to make decisions about the people who are around you, because we become, for the most part, the 5 people that we spend most of our time with. So my encouragement is, number 1, you can get over addiction. Number 2, you can stop smoking. I do strongly recommend, while we're in this pandemic and while we are in this season where the fear and the anxiety is heightened, you have to understand that smoking compounds the effect of heart disease, cancer, and stroke, diabetes being the 4th cause of death for African Americans. And so it's really important when you understand what is happening to your body, when you understand what is happening to the people around you, by changing the way that you think, you change your life and you change the people around you so that you make better decisions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Denise.
Yes.
That was awesome. I would come and give you a hug. 'Cause, man,
Right,
you know,
we
it's
fist
a long,
bump.
COVID friendly.